Welcome to Sometimes There's Side Eye, a podcast about two friends having real and unfiltered conversations about dogs and people. I'm Heather,
And I'm Kristi.
and today,
Why were you laughing?
it was like you forgot. It's literally like you forgot. You looked back and you were like, I'm Kristi.
Well, Julia's brought a squeaky toy in, so I was like, whoa, and I'm Kristi.
Okay, we can start it. I'm Heather.
Okay.
Oh my God, we're dying.
Please.
Are you ready?
Mhm.
Okay. I'm Heather.
And I'm Kristi.
And today we are going to talk about the subject of why do we always assume the worst in our dogs? Kristi and I started discussing this topic um, quite some time ago, really. And we just started, I think, because so many of our conversations started from a place of training and behavior. We also started talking about us as humans and how we respond to our dogs and different myths about dogs and our interactions with them. And we came to this point where we realized we really often assume the worst in our dogs. So we decided to give some examples of dogs that we know and times where we assume the worst and an actual explanation from, I would say, a behavior perspective or maybe a breakdown in training perspective of what was actually going on with the dog. So Kristi's going to take us away.
All right. So, if you listened to our last podcast, you learned a little bit about Ginny and the black devil that she was. And so, after having Ginny for several months, I was I was watching her, and she made eye contact, and she squatted on the carpet, and she peed while making eye contact with me.
Black Devil.
And I was right, and I was like, "Jenny, no. Oh, go outside." Oh. But I immediately thought, this is a medical issue. And when I brought it up to probably 10 different people, they said, "No, that's just Jenny getting back at you for something you've done. That's Jenny. That's who she is. She's just a hard dog." And I kept saying, "I don't think that's the case because she's never, it's been months. She's destroyed everything else in my life. Why would she just start this now?" Like,
Because it was a
and so
change. It was a change in her behavior, right,
it
Kristi?
was. It
Yeah.
was a change in her behavior because she was fine with the doggy door. She always has access to the doggy door. So she always went outside, never had accidents in the house. And then the last probably 5 to 6 months of having her, she had accidents almost daily inside the house. And what it was, once we finally got the rescue on board with getting her checked out, she had bladder issues. She
Hmm.
had some crystallization in there that caused her some urgency in going to the bathroom. So she couldn't
Yep.
make it. I have a very small house, but she still couldn't make it
Mhm.
across the house
I mean, she
to
was
get
not
out to the dog.
young, but
She,
even
she was
still,
spry though.
yeah, she was
She
spry,
was,
but
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 yeah, and
still,
so
it was a change.
yeah, and everyone was saying like, "Oh, you have to punish her, or you have to, you know, kind of that old school thinking." And I just kept thinking, I mean, she is not always easy, but I don't think in this case she's just trying to get back at me.
Yeah.
I think in this case there's something more going on. And I also had the pleasure of knowing she was a foster or a
Mm.
hospice foster. And so not pleasure, the
Mm.
the
That was not great.
no, that was
The
not the best word.
knowledge,
Yeah, the
the
yeah, the
understanding.
knowledge, the understanding that she was a hospice foster and that she was going to probably have some medical issues
Yeah.
along the way. And so I do think immediately I went to medical, um, and most everybody went to behavioral issue
Hmm.
of of just getting back at me for
Mhm.
something I had done, probably like yelling at her for eating a
Mhm.
Bible or something, you know.
Yeah.
Um, so so that was really eye-opening for me that the majority of people went in that direction.
Yeah.
Um,
Do,
so
let me
yeah,
ask, do you feel like um you've become much more educated about behavior training and everything in more recent years. And I feel like thinking of it as a revenge type behavior is more old school way of thinking. And really looking at the dog as a whole is a more educated, forward thinking response at this point, and where
mhm,
we should be coming from as trainers.
right. Yeah. Yeah, and I do I think sometimes too we get caught up in a dog should know this,
Yeah.
even outside of medical. So, um, for example, I do a lot of photography on the side. So a lot of times it's shelter dogs, but occasionally I'll do fundraisers where the dogs come in my backyard, and I have a whole photo booth set up, or I'll do paid pictures that way. Um, and I'm surprised by how many people think their dogs are just giving them a really hard time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, in my mind, it's like they came to Disneyland because there's all of a sudden if they're later in the day, there's 15 other dog pee smells in
Yeah.
there. There's a water bowl and there's things to look
Yeah.
at and there's things to sniff and it's a whole new place and there's this whole setup that they get to sniff and go on and so, it's like taking you to Disneyland and telling you, "You can only sit on this bench.
Yeah.
Just sit here, be
And
quiet,
watch
don't look,
and
and then
smell.
in 20 minutes, we're gonna leave,"
Yeah, and
without
keep in
giving you any
mind,
opportunities.
yeah, and keep in mind, like, asking us just to sit there and watch is equal to asking them just to sit there and smell, because
Yeah.
they are just getting bombarded by everything. And I
Mhm.
myself, I've taken my dogs to Christie's for photos, and you guys will probably continue to hear us laugh about Christy saying, "Pay the model, pay the model." But I do hear Christy in my head because she's really good at reminding people, like, "Hey, your dog's trying really hard and you're asking a lot. And let's remember that they are trying hard, and everybody take a beat, take a breath, pay the model, do whatever you have to do to like get some patience in the moment."
Mhm.
And you're right, they're being bombarded. They're in a new yard, in a new space, in a new circumstance, sometimes just meeting you. So new people,
Yeah.
they're with props. They have
Yeah.
all these different things going on. And it's good to remember, that you're not the only one who might be feeling nervous or unsure. And I know you want your dog to behave perfectly, but what the heck? I mean, we're not behaving perfectly.
No, no. And yeah, and so I do encourage like let your dog come in, let them sniff, have a great
Yeah.
time, and then after a few minutes, let me draw them in with some snacks
Yep.
and then let's get them positioned.
Yep.
And found I found a lot of times if owners are having a hard time with their dog, I can still get a picture, and I'll say, "Hey, why don't you take care of your other dog?" Or, "Why don't
Yeah.
you can you go grab me a drink?" So I get rid of the owner
Yeah.
in those situations so that I just have a moment with the dog to, like, try to figure out, "Hey,
Yep.
what is it that you don't like the surface? Or is it that you're just nervous? Or is it just that this is the best place in the whole world?"
Yep.
And so I'm gonna have to work around and get like really fast photos because I have 2 seconds of attention
Yep.
before you're like, I smell something on the other side. I gotta go. So, and
Bye.
recently, bye. Recently, I had a woman who was so frustrated with her dogs because they weren't behaving the way that they were supposed to. And she kept telling me, if my husband was here, they would be on it, and he doesn't put up with this. And I'm like, well, that's not a brag. Like to me, that's not a brag that your husband doesn't put up with dog behavior. It
Mhm.
just means like it's very regimented at your
Mhm.
house.
Mhm.
Um, and which is fine. Some houses need that and some dogs need that.
Mhm.
Not every dog though. And I remember she's like forcing her old dog to sit down and she's forcing her old dog into these situations. Well, she had stepped on a plastic bulb that was for
Because it was
Christmas, and
Christmas.
because it was Christmas time. And so the bulb had broken under her foot. And I had heard that. And I said, don't worry about it. They're cheap plastic bulbs. I'll grab it after the session. It's not a big deal. Well, then she puts her dog in that same spot and she's
Ooh.
forcing her dog to sit and the dog's not wanting to. And finally I said, stop, stop. I said, and I go under the dog and I said, there are shards of plastic where you're putting your dog. Like, let's listen to the dog's behavior
Yeah.
for a minute.
Yeah.
And who cares if your dog doesn't sit right there? It's if your dog wants to stand, it's still going to be a cute picture. Just let me do my thing. Like,
No, you
don't,
just have,
know.
you just have me coming in fixing his feet so that he can have a perfect stand, and Kristi going, his feet aren't even going to be in the photo.
That is true, actually, but but he was still having fun with you,
I
so it
know,
was
that's
fine.
true. It's really funny that you say about the sit thing because I was just somewhere with Tiago and I honestly can't remember where it was, but I had asked him for a sit. And for Tiago, a sit is a super go-to. He's just like, yep,
Yeah.
boom. Especially if I say it in a particular inflection that is just to him really clear for whatever reason.
Mhm.
Um, and I had said it that certain way, and he just stood there and looked at me, and I thought, for a moment, I thought, "Well, that's odd." And then I kind of
Mhm.
like looked around and I was like, well, shit, there's like stones everywhere. He doesn't want to sit. I don't need to sit. I just asked for it so that I could do
Yeah.
whatever I was doing and know that he was in a stationary position. I
Mhm.
think that there's a lot of times, and let me just say, Heather 5 years ago would not have looked at the surface that she just asked her dog to sit in. I don't even know if Heather pre-podcast training era would have done that. So like 3 years
Mhm.
ago, I'm not sure, but definitely Heather 5 years ago would not have thought about something like that.
Right.
And so we're not saying these things. If you're a pet parent and you're listening and you're not into training or behavior, we're not saying these things to like make anybody feel bad. This is more like, hey, food for thought.
Yeah.
And if you are listening to this and your dog doesn't do something that you know that they would normally be cool with, just
Mhm.
take a step back and take a moment because honestly, like it's way less frustrating for everyone in the scenario to take a beat and
Mhm.
assess why it's really happening.
Yeah. And you may not even understand. Like,
Mm-mm.
even if you take a step back,
Mm-hmm.
um, like I was telling Heather, like, what was it? Like a year ago, I was doing photos with Lucy. My dog is like the champion of photos because she knows she
Yep.
gets paid well. She sees the camera and she literally tries to run to her position, like any position. Like, this
Lucy
looks like
knows
a
the model
backpack.
always gets paid.
She she loves modeling. Like, that's her jam. Um, and I couldn't get I'm like, "Lucy, pay attention. Lucy, pay attention." And
Yep.
she like just wasn't having, and she would get on the bench and she'd huff at me and she'd get off before I gave her the release command. And finally I just said, "Okay, I'm just this is
Taking a
not our
beat.
night.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just take a break." And I didn't know for a couple months that she had valley fever. She just didn't feel good.
Yeah.
So I didn't know right away what was contributing to that, but
Yeah.
it it was down the road and I thought, "Oh, that makes more sense." Like,
Yeah.
that's when those symptoms started, way back then.
Yeah.
So I think just getting curious about behavior, or what is it,
Yeah.
Sarah Stremming who always says that, like, be curious about behavior,
Yeah.
like, think of, just get curious about it.
Yeah.
And I think
And
that's been super helpful.
yes. And obviously, if it's something that you know your dog has been reinforced for, I mean, let's face it, if I picked up a piece of cheese and Tater didn't automatically come running, I would be like, sound the alarm, red alert, something is wrong.
Yeah,
If
let's go to the
I,
emergency vet.
yeah, like legit, I don't even know what's happening, but we are in the car, lights and sirens on our way.
Yeah.
um, if I asked Tiago to come and lay with me, in a position like we have a little cuddle sesh at night. Everybody
Mhm.
laugh. And he knows
Not
come and
laugh.
cuddle.
Oh, I
Yeah,
love
I
it.
know. He has a little cuddle sesh. And sometimes he'll be like, no, ma'am. I'm not interested in cuddle sesh. Okay.
Mhm.
Then I just go, well, my feelings are a little hurt, but
Right, right.
but he's either hot, he's not into it, whatever the reason, it doesn't have to be a big deal and I don't have to like beg him to go and do the thing.
When when I was trying to teach Lucy the command over, like she loves to jump over things, but I wanted it on command, because we were doing the parkour.
Yeah,
Um, so we were training for parkour, just as something fun to do during the pandemic, since there were no classes or anything.
because
So
Heather
I was,
looped you into that bullshit.
yeah, you did,
Yeah,
but it
sure
was
did.
so much
Oh,
fun.
do you want to explain what parkour is just in case anybody doesn't know?
You explain what it
You want
is.
me?
You're
Okay.
probably better.
So, parkour. It's basically, teaching your dog to do fun things on different types of pieces of equipment. I think technically it's supposed to be things that are naturally occurring. So, Christy would be like teaching Lucy to jump over a fallen tree, or I taught um, Tater to jump inside a tire that was just like I guess that's not really naturally occurring, but it's you can't set it up to like make the thing happen. So a lot of
Yeah,
people
there's a
use,
limited number of like,
yeah,
you can set up to, like, 2 out of, like,
yeah,
10 things
and
or something.
so a lot of people use like gym or
Playground.
yeah, playground equipment when kids aren't using it, and that kind of stuff. And then you can teach your dog to do these different things: over, under, go around, all different commands. And you can submit videos and get titles. And it's just something fun that we were doing during the pandemic because you were outside and you didn't have to have other people around. It was safe, whatever. And it was getting
Mhm.
our dogs out. And it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it
So
was.
that's a really
Yeah.
long explanation. But if it sounds fun, go check out parkour for your dog.
Yeah, yeah, it is fun. And I found, it was a lot of things Lucy already knew, but
Yeah.
we needed to hone some of those skills, like, to be on command. Um, and so I was teaching her over, in my backyard, but I was also teaching her to sit in a box at the same time, right? Like, so I would like do over a couple times and then we'd switch it up and we'd do a couple
Mhm.
other things and I try to get her to sit in the box, and I had a bigger box and a smaller box because I needed her in the smaller box, but I wanted to give her space in the bigger box first. So I have two boxes out there. So set up right next to the jump. And I could
What could
not
go
figure
wrong?
out, right. And I knew she knew the commands. We had been working on them, and I knew she had almost had it down to perfection. And she was like not getting it. She was she was leaping from box to box, like as high as she could to try to land in the other box. And then the box was flipping up over top of
Mhm.
her. And like it was just,
Is
and she
this
was
what you
so
want?
yeah, and she was so enthusiastic about it, and luckily, we kind of have a relationship. I don't have I'm not a competitive person, to be honest. So for me, I'm like, if we fail at something, it's no big deal. It's an opportunity for us to laugh at ourselves.
Mhm.
Um, so I was starting to get frustrated, like, this, come on. And then she was so adorable, messing it up repeatedly, that I just laughed. And then I threw a treat scatter and we reset. I went back and looked at the video. I was like, well, no wonder she didn't know what she was doing. I thought I was giving very clear hand signals, like very clear. I was, like, just waving like a monkey, like, just doing I don't know what, and I was like, "Oh, my dog is a really good guesser at what
Right?
I want," and she was
Oh.
trying so hard and being so cute trying to interpret what those
Wait,
waving arms were.
don't you call her the like angry Italian woman and you're over here on video waving your arms around, giving
Yeah.
commands in quotation marks like an angry Italian woman.
No,
And
not like an angry Italian one. She's like a drunk, angry, old Italian woman.
oh,
Like,
oh, thank you for the
sure.
extra
Yes, you're
description.
welcome.
Yes.
You're welcome.
Okay.
I'm just like an Italian. I like my hands.
Yeah. You just got the hands going all over the place. And Lucy's
Yeah.
going, oh, you want this? You want this? You want this?
You want
Sure, I can
Yeah,
read
what
that.
else? Yeah. What else could I do for a treat? What would you like? I can jump in the air.
She's like, I'm nailing this. And
Yeah,
really, she was.
she was. And I every time that video comes up, I share it every year on
Yeah.
social media because one, it's adorable and
Yep.
hilarious,
It is.
but also it's a reminder like we don't get it right a lot of times and we
Yeah.
don't need to expect perfection out of our dogs when we're not perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a lot kinder on everyone if we can just kind of have a little laugh about it. I mean, look,
Yeah.
nothing that we're doing is life and death here. We're not
No.
training search and rescue dogs. We're not training, fire rescue dogs. We're not
Right.
training cadaver dogs. Like, hey guys, these are our
Well, that's not
pets.
life or death. It's just death for cadaver
Thanks,
dogs.
Christy.
You're welcome.
Whatever. Um, But anyway,
Yes.
none of the things that we are working towards are life and death. So
Yeah.
let's just take a beat, laugh at ourselves, laugh at our dogs,
Mhm.
and realize that we're probably screwing up somewhere and they're
Yeah.
just trying like hell to get it right. Oh my
Mhm.
God. It's so funny, but it's a good lesson.
And definitely record your
I,
training sessions,
yes,
I would say. Like, that was
yes,
something new for me, and I did not realize how terrible I was at just
yeah.
doing whatever and thinking I was really good at training.
It
My
actually
dog is really good at guessing.
actually reminds me of a scenario with Tater that goes along with what we're talking about. Because, and I will remember when I was training him on scent work, and we were working with using a pipe with him, and that was brand new. And thankfully, I had recorded what I was doing because I would have never figured it out if I hadn't. What is Julius doing back there?
He's
He's like,
muzzle punching Lucy's ear to try to get her to play.
oh gosh. Um, so I was okay, so just so everybody knows, Tater does not have a stay. He also doesn't have a wait. It's just like we've both given up. I get frustrated and he gets frustrated and it's a whole mess. So I just live life this way. And so normally when I'm doing my scent work, I put Tiago behind the island on a sit stay. I go, I change my hides around for him. Then I go, I get him, I release him, we go do the setup, right? Well, with Tater, he doesn't have a stay. So I'm like, okay, well, what do I do so that I have time to change the hides around? So I started throwing food and
Mhm,
like basically doing a food scatter away from the pipe so that I can do the swap. And by the time he's found the kibble, I can walk back over and we can go and do the new hide.
mhm.
Well, all of a sudden, his behavior of laying down when he smelled the thing was like falling apart. And he was this scatterbrain and he's like all a mess. And Julius is climbing on Christy right now. And
He's a lap dog, you guys. He's
yeah,
a 65-pound lap dog.
and his whole scent work behavior had like completely fallen apart. And of course, me, I assume like frustrating bulldog, like you're just
Yeah.
sniffing for the foods because he's so crazy food motivated. And so I was like, "Oh man, you're a mess. You just like lost your head, whatever." And I go and I watch the playback and I'm like, "You freaking idiot. You asked him to put his nose on the ground in between your setups and then you wanted him just to snap and go right back to finding the food." And
Mhm.
it's like, it was so clear when I watched the video that I was making it confusing and he was doing
Mm.
what he thought was correct.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I have Christy in my life. So I didn't get pissed off and I didn't get, I mean, I probably got frustrated, but like I had a
Sure.
moment,
It's a bulldog. You get
yeah, and
frustrated.
took a step back and then watched the video and was like, "Oh, I'm an idiot." And it wasn't good training. And I thought I was doing the right thing. I was trying to help him, and instead I
Right.
ended up making a mess. So next time I asked my husband to sit in the room and I would put Bulldog on a leash and ask him to sit there and hold Bulldog while I changed the sets around. I could just teach him a stay, but that would be more frustrating. And we did it that way. And guess what? Behavior was gone. No issue.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. And I could have just
Yeah.
been like, he's being a fucking asshole bulldog
Which you sometimes say. Yeah.
too. But in that moment, I gave bulldog some grace, and
Yeah.
and I didn't do it.
Right.
Miracles do happen.
Yeah. He was trying so hard. He
He
thought.
was. He
He
really
thought.
was.
Yeah.
So,
By the way, I can hear myself in your like computer,
like
I
always,
think. When I talk. Like just the
was it doing that
uh,
before?
no,
Mm, what changed?
I don't know.
How about
Well,
now?
maybe I can. Let's see. No, I can't hear myself now. Okay.
No? Everything sounds good now?
Yeah.
Hmm. Interesting. Hopefully the recording's okay.
Yeah, it was just like for the last like maybe 4 minutes, 5 minutes. I could
Interesting.
hear myself. So
Okay.
I don't know. So thought I'd stop right there at that
Yeah.
story.
Yeah, for sure.
Make sure we didn't do everything like that. Yeah.
Eh, do you have other examples?
I mean, I'm sure I do, but not
Do
off
we
the
want to
top of.
talk about my client dog?
Yeah, I think that's an important one
Yeah, I think it's an
because
interesting one.
because I think what we've talked about is a lot of really common
Yes.
situations that I think every pet owner at some point is going to find themselves in a situation where behavior changes and it's either a medical issue or you're doing training wrong, which is
All of
not to be
us.
mean. That's
All of us.
everybody. Everybody does
Yes.
training wrong.
Even the best
Um,
trainers out there will say, "Oh my
yeah,
god, I watched my video back and I'm a mess."
yeah, and I figured out what it was that I was
Yep.
doing. Yeah, yeah. So I think we'll all be in those situations at some point. So those are pretty common
Yeah.
situations. I think your training client is a little more complex.
Complex. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I recently had a board and train client for an adult dog. Um, and he had come out of the shelter system about 2 months ago, and had been adopted by his family, and maybe less than 2 months, but at least a month. They had fostered him initially, and he just fit in with their family, and that was it. And they said he's not going anywhere. Um, but he's a young dog, and he was different. They have two older senior dogs, so he had injected this energy into their house, and they really wanted to get some basic training under their belt for them. So anyway, they reached out to me, and one of the things that they told me was that they were having potty training issues. And I thought to myself, oh, well, like that's no big deal. Um, I generally, at this point in my life, will potty train with a clicker, and I find it very successful. And I wasn't nervous about helping potty train this adult dog. And so I thought it interesting though that they have a dog door and he was still having issues. I do not have a dog door at my house. So I figured, you know what? He probably just needs some consistency, and him having to be taken out by a human every however often will add that consistency, that concise, clear, instruction for him, and we'll get right through it. So he came for 2 weeks. And the first couple days, I'm using a clicker. He's going potty. He's getting to the point where he's pottying on command. Everything's going fantastic. I'm like, oh, yeah, he just needed some clarity. And
Mhm.
him having to actually be taken out, so often tracking his potty habits was helping the situation.
Right.
So I reported back to his family that it's going great, and was all excited because I got a video of him where I was like, "Go potty," and he peed and then he pooped, and I was like, "Look at this! I'm a miracle worker." Not really, people. And
Training
so
training videos you can send pee and poop videos to
for
your
sure,
training client.
why not?
Yeah.
Um, and so within like 24 hours of that, it fell apart, and I all of a sudden he would not potty on command. He would not and that sounds like really authoritarian. He wasn't going on cue, which he had been doing this really consistently. Um, his behavior had changed with his potty habits, like everything just fell apart. And I just sat there and I was like, I'm stumped. Like I don't understand. Um, and then I put together after some close observation um, that the reason that he was not going potty was because he was going into the yard and he was chasing shadows and reflections, which we did know was a problem, but
Mhm.
he had not presented at my house at all in like the first 48 hours he was with us.
Right.
And my assessment was he was super excited. He's very dog social. He was playing with my dogs. He was excited. He was in a new place. He's kind of getting comfortable. And then also, my schedule had changed and the time of day that he was outside was different and
Mhm.
he was seeing more shadows.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden, I'm walking this dog in my yard for 45 minutes and he just will not go potty. And I'm seeing these, different behaviors happening. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, like this is the actual problem.
Mhm.
He's so distracted by the shadow chasing in the high sun that he can't do the behavior. And
Mhm.
so he's going out, he's chasing shadows. We're saying go potty. He's like, I'm not even hearing you. And
Right.
he can't even do the behavior. He's going in the house, the shadow's gone, depending on the time of day, he's going potty in the house and having an accident.
Mhm.
Um, so I thought it was really interesting and it was reconfirmed when my husband said to me, he will not go potty when I take him outside. And I had already automatically started taking him to a shaded area,
Mhm.
waiting for him to realize there's nothing to chase, and then saying the command to go potty. But I had not communicated that to my husband. And so
Yeah.
he wasn't doing that behavior, like he wasn't doing
Sure.
that whole chain. And I said, "Oh, by the way, you need to do this." And as soon as he started doing that, boom, it all fell together. He started consistently pottying on command again.
Mhm.
And at that point, the challenge was okay, he clearly understands now, and we have to deal with the other issues to make sure that it
Mhm.
doesn't consistently happen. So we consulted veterinarian, got some supplements on board, et cetera, et cetera. That part of it has to be treated separately, but
Sure.
we kind of conquered or got an understanding of the actual issue of the potty
Mhm.
training. And it's interesting because, you know, 20 years ago, we would have been like, that dog's spiteful, or that dog's this, or that dog's that, when in reality, he really just didn't have the tools to focus on the task because more than anything, he feels this compulsive need to chase a shadow or chase a light reflection, um,
Right.
which is sad in its own right and needs to be dealt with
Sure.
separately, which we were from a behavior perspective, et cetera. But when I took him back to his family and we talked about it, they were like, "Oh, oh, this makes total sense with what we were seeing."
Mhm.
Because they said to me initially, like, it's like he forgets to go to the bathroom, and it's like, well, what does that look like?
Yeah, that's
Especially
not
when they
normal.
have a dog door.
Yeah.
And so the coolest part is that they're now making a completely shaded run for him to be able to go potty outside the dog door so that he can work from a supplemental and medicinal standpoint and behavior standpoint. The shadow and light
Mhm.
reflection behavior, we can like put that to bed hopefully,
Mhm.
and he has a safe place to be able to go focus on what he needs to do, and it makes
Mhm.
everybody's life better. um
Yeah.
but it's such so interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, I had seen you this weekend, and as I heard you say that, um, driving home from that event, I told my friend that I was driving home with, I said, "Man, Heather's so smart." Like, who would have put that together, you know? Like, and the more you do it, the more you learn to dig in a little deeper
Yeah,
and look for different things. But yeah, that and what amazing owners too to
yes.
say, okay,
And
like
they
how
gave
do
me
we help
so
this?
much information. Yeah.
Hmm.
They couldn't put the puzzle pieces together, but they gave me all these different puzzle pieces. And at
Hmm.
the end of the day, really, Christy, it's not any different than you recognizing that there was a behavior change with Ginny. I mean, this dog was consistently like literally I was like, "Hey, go potty," and he would stand there squat and pee. And then 48 hours later, it falls apart. Well,
Hmm.
that has nothing to do with spite or giving me the middle
Right.
finger. Something behaviorally is going on there, or something medically is going on there. And
Hmm.
so I think if we can just always keep in mind, if you see even in a 48-hour span like that with a dog that I didn't know prior to those 2 days, but I had seen consistent results. You know, how many dogs times does a dog go potty in 48 hours when you're watching it
Right.
go,
Yeah.
physically taking it to go, you know? And I was seeing good results, and then bam, it all falls apart. It really looked black and white to me. And that something was wrong, not I didn't figure it out like that, you know? But in the grand scheme of things, when we have a dog that suddenly is doing something completely out of character or completely different from yesterday, to me, and I think that our veterinary friends would say, you need to look at medical, and don't just assume because it's a young dog that it can't be medical. So many things can
Sure.
happen.
Oh yeah.
And then if we rule out medical or things that make sense in the way of medical, then we absolutely need to look at behavior and be thinking about behavior
Hmm.
from a standpoint of, hey, what has changed? Did you get a new boyfriend? Did you buy a new
No.
car and it looks no, Christy did not get a new boyfriend. I almost laughed when I said that. Did you move to a new house?
Yeah.
Do you take your dog to work every day and suddenly you're not taking them on Mondays? I mean, the possibilities of what could happen are endless. Did you change their dog food? Did you put them on a new supplement? There's just a variety of things
Hmm.
that could create
And
a complete change.
yeah. And for Ginny, with her anxiety, me moving from coming in the garage every day to coming in the front door instead, because my garage door clicker had
Oh,
gone kaput, created a host of issues for her
hmm,
and increased
yep.
her anxiety so much. I have hiccups, I'm sorry. Increased her anxiety like exponentially.
Yeah, I believe it. And
Yeah.
there's also, the point of different dogs being in different stages of life. Dogs
Mhm.
who are coming into social maturity, sexual maturity, and changes.
Mhm.
Puppies going through different periods of development, dogs going
Yeah.
from adults to seniors, all of this different stuff that can happen. I mean, when Cash had his behavioral changes, which we talked about in our last episode, the first thing we did was go to medical because there's a lot of things that medically can cause an onset of aggression that comes out of nowhere. Um, and I mean, ultimately, we don't know what the actual cause was, but it was the first place I went, because it
Yeah.
was such an abrupt change.
Mhm.
So I think if we're doing right by our dogs as pet parents, as trainers, as whatever your role is, um,
Mhm.
and also living your best life with your dog, I guess,
Mhm.
just kind of keep it in mind. If something
Yeah.
comes out of nowhere, might want to sit back and evaluate what has
Yeah.
changed
Yeah.
and from a behavioral and a medical standpoint.
Mhm. Yeah. I agree. I know Lucy at one point we were on a walk and somebody's dog got off leash and came running up to us. And Lucy is so dog social, but she doesn't like being rushed when she's on
Mm.
leash, by off leash dogs or on leash dogs for that matter. She
Like
just doesn't like to be rushed.
like
Yeah,
strangers
stranger
hugging me.
danger.
No,
Yeah.
strangers hugging me. No, thank you.
Oh, no, thank you.
I don't
Yeah.
like,
Yeah,
yeah.
I understand that. Like,
I've
why?
been friends with
Oh,
Christy for like 3 years and we just started hugging. I don't know. 5 years,
it's
six
true.
years. What did we decide?
I just
7
let
years now?
I don't know, forever. I don't know.
Ah.
I just let other people set the pace for hugging. I'm like,
Yep.
if you want to
Yep.
hug me, it's cool. If not, that's cool.
Yep.
But
Anyway.
yeah, anyway, so yeah, Lucy doesn't enjoy being rushed by off-leash dogs, but she was pretty okay. Like I realized I had tensed up on her leash.
Mhm.
And then I was like, "Ooh, okay, like let's not do that." But she was responding pretty well. And the moment I let the tension off, she was like, "Bam!" I was like,
I
"That's
have
not
big
how that
feelings.
behavior." Yeah, that's not how that behavior is supposed to work. It's supposed to be no tension equals like
Mhm.
more relaxed dogs. Um, but I know Heather and I talked a bit about the behavior, and we both said it might be that she's older and she just doesn't like
Yep.
dogs as much as she used to,
Yep.
which to me was heartbreaking because like that's one of my favorite things about her
Yeah.
is she's so dog social,
Yeah.
and I love seeing her interact with other dogs. And it turns out she had she's had a couple health issues, continued valley
Yeah, I
fever,
was gonna
which
say,
makes
and
her
she has to have
grumpy,
knee surgery, so
and
fit
she
time to be
had
grumpy
knee
too.
surgery. Yeah, and now she has to go in and we're taking out all the hardware. So there were some other contributing factors in
Yep.
there. Um, but I think it's also good to like know like, hey, let's consider several things. Let's consider life stage. Because it
Yep.
really could have been that she's just old and she doesn't want to deal with other dogs. Like
Yep.
I'm old and I don't want to deal with other people. Like,
We've discussed it with Tiago and Tater. They're going to be 6
yeah,
this
yeah,
spring,
liar.
and like I've said to you, hey, they're like I need to keep that in mind
Mhm,
when I'm setting them up to be in a situation with another dog or any situation at all.
mhm.
Hell, we all get grumpier as we get older, so
It's
it's
true.
something to keep in mind, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the life stages is something definitely
Yeah.
to keep in mind, but also like get curious about other things. Like, is it life stages or is it maybe something else? And I think it's when she got grumpy with Tiago, like he
Yes.
bumped into her and she snarked at him.
And
And
they're like
like,
best friends. We talked about
yeah,
that
and
too.
Tiago actually was like, what happened, man?
Yeah.
And, like,
Your
we
little
we
feelings
both were like,
were.
"Hey, what happened?"
Yeah.
Like, everyone was so shocked that it was like, "I need to get her into the vet. Something's not
Yeah.
right."
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was such an obvious. I mean, if she would have grumped at Tater, we would have been like, whatever, bulldog. But for her to grump at Tiago is
right,
absolutely sound the alarm. Something's off.
yeah,
Um,
and it really was just an accidental he was running and
yeah,
he just bumped her as he ran, and
yeah.
it was such a
Something,
big reaction for
yeah,
something so minute that it was
yeah,
like, "Ooh, that's something's there."
yeah. I agree. I mean, so I guess the whole point is
Get
what is the whole
curious.
point? Get curious.
Like,
Yeah,
your
if
dog's not
something
being a
changes,
jerk just to be a jerk.
yeah, there's probably an actual reason. And
Mhm.
how important is the thing that you're asking for? I mean, is it
True.
really, really that important that your dog do the thing?
Mhm.
Like Tiago sitting in the stones. Was it really that important? No.
No.
So it doesn't matter. Um, and I think that if we can all give a little more grace on both sides, then we can live better with our dogs in general. And if we
Yeah.
pay attention to their behavior, we get curious about that, and we pay attention to their overall wellness, then
Mhm.
we can make sure that they're doing well. And in the end, then we're doing well.
Yeah. Yeah, they're more enjoyable if you're both doing well together,
Heck yeah.
you know?
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
So if you like episode 3, here we go.
Here we go.
Like it,
Yeah. Like
like
it,
it,
subscribe.
Oh, and rate us, please.
Rate us.
To
Yeah.
whoever gave us 5-star ratings, thank you so much, you guys. We see them and we appreciate them. We don't know who you are,
But
but
we
we
do
sure do
appreciate them.
appreciate them. So if you're listening to this on any platform whatsoever, please give us a rating, because it does make a difference, and it'll allow us to get pushed out to more platforms and more people hear what we're doing. And I guess stay tuned for next time.
Yeah,
Yeah. Bye, everybody.
absolutely. Bye, guys.